The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Hey, good afternoon, and welcome to this week's surprise installment for the Mark and Mark Show. We actually have our star of the show, Mr. Mark Littell, out on assignment. He's actually in Cuba again doing a big-time speech in front of the World of Baseball. I believe the World of Baseball Congress. I'd have to double-check it. But in his absence, I am co-hosting this week with Doug Gladstone, who is a champion for all of the gentlemen, I call them the Forgotten 500, who have not been vested in the Major League Baseball pension and have been mistreated and forgotten by the MLBPA. So welcome to the show. You've been a guest before, but now you're a co-host, so the pressure's on you, Mr. Doug Gladstone.
Yeah, the pressure is definitely on my shoulders. You know, how do you fill in for a man who admittedly blew up his father's truck with a few sticks of dynamite? This is a ham-handed way of saying I'm not country, and I certainly don't want to blow this show up because it's always been getting high ratings, and Google Analytics has always shown that a lot of people love this program. So, I know I'm not Mark Littell, but I'm going to do my best, and I thank you for the opportunity.
Well,
if you don't mind.
Well, I was going to say, sometimes you have to get a reliever for the relief pitcher, and in this case, since we have a reliever, we got to bring in a catcher, too, so you might as well introduce the catcher, who's also a friend of the show.
Yes, this catcher in particular is a very good friend of the show. He's currently out in Arizona now, and most notably, in his last at-bat as a big leaguer, he played for the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Seattle Mariners, but in his last at-bat ever, when he was with the Seattle Mariners, he hit a home run. Now, that's a heck of a way to go out, finishing your MLB career, but that MLB career, unlike, someone such as Clayton Kershaw of the Los Angeles Dodgers, unlike someone like A-Rod, that MLB career, in my opinion, has been sullied and tarnished. And on that note, I will introduce to you, it is my great good pleasure of introducing a Bronx boy who played at Chaminade High School, Mr. Kevin G. Pasley.
Yes, sir, Mark. Doug, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Mark, good to talk with you again, too. I did hit a home run my last at bat, and this is a nice story that I think it's kind of interesting. There are only two Major League players in the history of the game who have hit a home run their last at bat and who have had their number retired. So if you want to talk to some baseball aficionado who has all the answers per se, I would say he probably would not answer this one correctly. And rather than have you guess, I can tell you off the
I was going to guess.
Do you know who they are? Go ahead, because I'm not going to say it. You go ahead and guess.
Ted Williams hit a home run in his last at bat.
That was my guess, too.
Well, you are correct.
Yep.
And he of course had, he's one of, if not the greatest hitter of all time. He had his number retired, number 9. And, of course, my number was retired, number 4, because Duke Snider wore the number. So I hit a home run, my last at bat, and had my number retired. So that's the answer. Pasley and Ted Williams. I didn't hit as well as he did, that's for sure.
All right, listeners,
Pasley,
this is a great question for you to throw out at the bar.
Oh, absolutely.
And Ted Pasley, I'm sorry, fellas. I don't want to talk over you. I'm just saying that Pasley and Ted Williams sounds a whole heck of a lot better than Weiss and Gladstone.
Well, that's I don't know about that. Anyway,
Kev, I got a question for you. Were you the last Dodger to wear number 4 before it was retired?
You know what? I believe, I wish I could say that's the case, but I do believe that Billy North, he of the Oakland A fame also, finished his career in L.A. and wore number 4 also. So it was Duke Snider, myself, and then Billy North.
Huh. I gotta look that up to see if Billy North wore it I guess, well, I'm just going to say that I still wear number 4, and I wear my Staten Island Dodgers uniform twice a week, so I'm keeping that number alive. It's my favorite number.
You're in the Hall of Fame. You're in the Radio Hall of Fame and the Hall of Fame of aficionado baseball fanatics in the metropolitan New York area.
I'm in no Hall of Fame. Let's put that disclaimer out there right now. And to be quite frank, my legend is only in my mind.
I hear you.
So, Kev and Doug, tell us about the predicament that we're in right now with the Major League Baseball Players Association. I personally, I didn't call Tony Clark because I couldn't get in touch with him, but I did call Steve Rogers, who's a Jersey guy, and I'm in Staten Island, which is a stone's throw away, and I've never gotten through. One of the guys that we know, Doug Butch Haber, was hung up on by Steve. Kevin, you said you've spoken to him. He's been kind of cordial, but no real results. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it was just a simple situation where I changed my address here in Arizona, and I wanted to make sure that the check that they do send to me on a yearly basis arrived, on a timely basis. So rather than send me to a voicemail, the secretary sent me right to his office and rang me through, and he was, it was just businesslike. Okay, Kevin, here's the address. Good. He wrote it down. We'll take care of it, Kev. All right, thank you so much. Bye. And that was it. So I didn't, at that point, I didn't talk to him about the first time I did talk to him, I asked him, what's the story in regards to the guys in my situation who don't have 4 years vested? And I wasn't in tune with the actual facts as I am now, reading Doug's articles and following him on Facebook and on the blog. And he just put me off and said, well, you're going to go ahead and get your quarterly based on the amount of time you spent vested in the league. And you should expect that check in February. Have a good day. So he didn't really, I thought at that point that he would absolutely go to bat for people in our boat. I just thought that was like, who wouldn't? I mean, they're Major League Baseball players. There are 500 people who have experienced that and who have paid their dues and worked their, backsides off, and their family has too. So if indeed a person can play 43 days in 4 years and receive a pension of $34,000 and medical benefits, then by goodness, the person who played before 1979 should get the same thing. It seems pretty obvious to me.
You of course are preaching. Yeah, no, you of course are preaching to the choir here. Both Marks, Mr. Weiss and Mr. Littell. In fact, a lot of the program hosts here on the Comfortably Zoned radio network have gone to bat, figuratively speaking, to support this cause. And it is an underreported topic. It is baseball's dirty little secret. The more and more I tell people about this, their mouths drop. They're actually in shock because everyone, and Mark might have mentioned this when I was on the show in October, everyone thinks, today's ball players are set for life, and really they should be unless you're making a lot of bad investments in the market. Today's ball players have nothing really to worry about. But, people such as yourself, Kevin, or friends of the show like Carmen Fanzone or David Clyde or George Historic Theodore, you were the guys who made free agency possible. That and, of course, the Andy Messersmith decision. But you were the guys who went out on picket lines and endured labor stoppages and went without paychecks, all so that someone like a Clayton Kershaw could earn this year $31.17 million. And by the way, as Mark Weiss knows, I do not begrudge anyone that kind of money. But
I don't begrudge him at all.
Right. But let's have a little respect for the men who came before free agency and take care of them. And one of the things, I'm not a psychologist, but one of the things I've written about extensively, and the last time I was on the show, Mark sort of echoed this sentiment. I really believe that Steve Rogers is covering face. He's absolutely embarrassed that as the National League player representative in 1980, he let this occur. I can tell you so many of Steve Rogers' teammates with the Montreal Expos are being affected by this. And what a great teammate he must have been, to not support men like Glenn Atkinson or Jim Cox or Don DeMolo, all of these men who played with Steve Rogers. What they must think of him, I know what I think of him, but I'd love to get people like Atkinson, Cox, and DeMola on this program, because it is just a travesty. And I feel for Steve Rogers. I really do. He's the pension lackey. He's the one who is trotted out every time a newspaper reporter calls about this issue. And the person I really want to hear from, as Mark alluded to earlier, is Tony Clark. I want to know what Tony Clark thinks. I know what Steve Rogers thinks, and I'm sure he's whispering in Tony Clark's ear, but, with all due respect to the dead, Michael Weiner was gracious. He was a gracious man. You knew where he stood. You knew what his position was on this issue, and I dare say if it wasn't for the late Michael Weiner, who succumbed to brain cancer 4 years ago, men like Kevin would not, in fact, get this. I won't call it a pension because it's not a pension.
A quarterly stipend is what I call it.
That's right. I call it a reparation. I call
blood
it
money.
I get $2,500 less $500 in taxes, so I get $2,000, which I'm not. I'm grateful for it because it's something I could use. But I too agree. I mean, I played against Don DeMola, by the way, in high school. He played at Oceanside High School on Long Island when I was at Chaminade, and he played almost 4 years. I think he had 3 years in. But you're exactly right.
Not at all. He had 2 years in. Yeah.
No, 2 years. Okay. But Steve, I really am. I was just taken aback when I read this regarding Steve and Tony, and how they could be nonplussed by us. I mean, that they would just throw us by the wayside, and just treat us like. Well, I'm going to say this. My brother called in and talked to Pete Rose on the phone. This was years ago. Pete was doing a radio talk show, and my brother got in, and he said, "Hey, Pete, what's the story? How come guys like who don't get 4 years vested in the big leagues don't get a pension?" And Pete said, if they could play a lick, they'd get a pension. Next question, So that was his attitude. Like, they're not good enough. They didn't get the 4 years in.
That's a totally ridiculous answer, and it attests to the fact that the man who is now there are three, right? Mark, tell me if I'm correct. The Atlanta Braves situation that was announced a couple of days ago. There are three men who are on the permanently ineligible list.
Yeah.
A guy like Pete Rose, that betrays his total ignorance, because if a man can play 43 game days and have 43 game days of service credit after 1980, and a person like, for example, Bob the Macaroni Pony Coluccio, can play 3
Chicago
years,
White Sox,
and that's Milwaukee Brewers, correct. If he can attain 3 years and 135 game days of credit, or Carmen Fanzone, who can attain 3 years and 140 game days of credit. No one ever said that David Clyde or Bob Coluccio or George Theodore or Carmen Fanzone or Kevin Pasley couldn't play a lick. You guys are being penalized for playing at the wrong time.
Well, you know what? I'm going to blow this whole thing up right now, because as we always talk about it, Doug and I will text or email or Facebook post on it, and it gets my blood boiling, the whole subject. But Kev, you're a New York guy just like me. You've heard about Local 3, the electricians union, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. If you spend 5 or 6 years as an apprentice at Local 3 and then move in to becoming a full-blown union member for how long, whatever it takes, those 5 or 6 years are counted toward your pension. the 12 years that you spent in the minor leagues back and forth between the majors 3 or 4 times are not counted in this, and I don't understand why, because you can't get to the major leagues unless you're part of a select few group of like about 3 or 4 or 5 guys who go straight to the majors. The rest of them all have to apprentice, and because of that, I don't understand why that's not counted in there, and that infuriates me.
You know what? That's a tremendous point. There's no question about it. Any business, any labor union right now, if you want to start, you want to be an electrician, you want to be a plumber, you're going to go ahead and become an apprentice. You're going to learn your trade. Then you have then you move up to the big leagues. Then you move up to you're a licensed contractor, just like us. I mean, I played a lot of minor league games, and I played I remember Mr. Al Campanis, the GM of the Dodgers, said, "Kev, you got to go to Mexico because if you want to make the ball club, we need you to play more." So every single winter, I'd go to Mexico or I'd go to the Dominican, and I never made the club out of in L.A. out of spring training. I did in Seattle, but be that as it may, those years that we played are not. They're just like you have the right to play in the big leagues if you play good enough. Then we're going to start counting your time and compensating you. It definitely should turn. It should be absolutely. Minor leagues should be accounted for in some regard. If a guy does go to the big leagues.
I'll go with one better. I was telling this to a former major leaguer whose name he's a friend, but I don't want Stevie and Tony and all the other guys
to come down on
East 49th Street to come down on me. Exactly. But I was telling you that there are people who, for example, Billy Connors or Don Reynolds or Dan Worthen of the Montreal Expos. Now, Dan Worthen, as a New York Mets fan, is a lousy pitching coach, and from his career numbers, he wasn't too great a pitcher to begin with. But Dan,
I played with him in Portland, Oregon. We were with the Pirates together. Anyway,
yeah, well, he ruined people's arms.
That was back in '79, right, Kev?
Exactly. Yes.
Dan Worthen, Billy Connors, and Don Reynolds. They're all going to get pensions once they're finished. Dan Worthen probably is finished, so he's probably collecting right now. Billy Connors, I still think, is a special assistant to the Steinbrenner family down in Tampa.
Exactly.
And of course,
Don high school too, by the way.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Don Reynolds, the older brother of, yes, you heard it right, Harold Reynolds, is the Northwest Director of Scouting for the Arizona Diamondbacks. None of them would be receiving any kind of pension from Major League Baseball because none of them accrued the same amount, the necessary amount of time. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago about a Danny Murphy. No, not Dan Murphy of the Washington Nationals, the talented all-star second baseman, but Danny Murphy, the golden boy, who played for the Chicago Cubs. He got a $100,000 bonus check in 1960. And you talk about minor league time. This is an interesting story. He started out as an outfielder. He did a Babe Ruth in reverse. He started out as an outfielder, then went down and recast himself as a pitcher and came up with the Chicago White Sox in 70 and 71.
Right.
And if he had all his minor league credit accrued, he would easily, he lives out in Danbury, Mass, I believe, now. He easily would be having a pension. So, I agree completely with the notion, as Mark has, put forth, and believe me, he has put the IBEW number 3 analogy forth a lot. I agree that your minor league service should be taken into account because even though minor leaguers do get a pension, it's not a big pension. It really isn't. I don't know if you knew this, Mark or Kevin. Mike Caldwell of the Brewers told me about this. There's a pension for minor league service but obviously it's nothing. It pales in comparison to what you can accrue with your major league pension, with your major league service credit. But yeah, if your minor league service was taken into account, most of these guys, we wouldn't even be talking about this situation. You'd all have.
Well, Doug, I did a calculation which I thought would be a good compromise, because obviously they're going to turn around and some might take the Pete Rose response to being, well, if they could play a lick, they would get a pension. So my thought process was, okay, let's give them some credence to that, not because we want to agree with them, but because in negotiation you have to give and get. So why don't we say that every year in AAA counts as 3/4 of a year in the major leagues, and every year in AA counts as half a year in the major leagues. So we're not giving a full amount for the minor league service. We're prorating it, but we're doing it in an equitable way to get these guys qualified to get what they deserve.
It's one solution.
Yeah, I like that.
One solution. Yep. I have another solution, and this is one that's been articulated by one of your colleagues out in Connecticut. How about just give one game day's receipts to this fund? Now, I understand the union's reaction is going to be hell no. These guys play for 162 games a year. We're not giving a free one, to anybody, because let's say conservatively 16 home games, maybe you could raise between $16 and $20 million from one game day's gate receipts. The union is going to bother.
Absolutely.
But it's one way to fund this.
I was thinking that maybe the best way to fund it is to whatever the gate receipts are from the All-Star game, which the players don't get paid for anyway, but the owners suck in a boatload of money. And I can tell you, when the Mets had the All-Star game, I think it was in 2013, they was charging like $1,000 a ticket for the for the package. Give a percentage of that, and that would cover it.
Do you remember why they used to have two All-Star games in the early 1960s?
I think for 3 or 4 years they had two All-Star games.
Yep, they did. In fact, one of the gentlemen who is in Kevin's boat, Dave Steinhaus, whose son, by the way, Michael Steinhaus, actually does get a pension. Talk about that. Steve Grilly's in the same situation. Jason's going to get a pension, but not Steve. But Michael Stenhouse gets a pension, while Dave Stenhouse does not. Dave is in Providence, Rhode Island. He started one of those All-Star games as a rookie in 1961. The original intent of going to two All-Star games, Mark, was to fund the players' pension fund.
So much for all intents, and just like the lottery's original intent was to be a supplement for education, and it turns out the lottery money was just the education budget. So the best laid plans, right?
Yeah, but that's the idea. I won't take credit for it. Tony D'Angelo, one of your co-hosts out in Connecticut, he's the one who's pushing one game day's receipt. I like yours as well. But again, this is Tony Clark and Steve Rogers we're talking about. These guys.
This is their thing. They own it. I mean, let's be perfectly clear. Those two guys, their group owns it, not Major League Baseball's owners. Because the owners will always tell you, hey, if the Players Association brought this to us during negotiations, we talk about it, but we're not going to bring it up.
Right.
And why should they?
Right. And they don't have to. Exactly, as you said. It is not their job to negotiate about this matter. So when Steve Rogers said, we don't think the league is going to bring this up, well, he's being disingenuous because it's not the league's job, as you correctly said. The players have to bring it up. Anyway, I want to bring up the idea that we haven't spoken about yet. Kevin, and I don't want to put you in the hot seat here, but in essence, yes, I do. Do you feel betrayed by your baseball band of brothers because there are a lot of people, I've the last 7 years I've devoted a lot of time to this issue, and a lot of these guys who I've spoken to are just happy to be getting anything. They actually thank Major League Baseball and the union for doing this for them. And a lot of them have told me, well, Mr. Gladstone, we're not young Turks like you. Well, I'm 57 years old. I'm not a young Turk.
Right.
But they're just happy and content and la-di-da to get anything. I'd like to hear it from a player who is impacted by this, why you feel that, and by the way, there's, as any parent knows, there's a question of need and want. Why do you want this money? And more importantly, do you need this money?
In my situation, I know everybody's, obviously the situations are different. You mentioned Carmen Fanzone. I mean, I was a Met fan or Yankee fan when I was growing up. Fanzone played with the Cubs, and I knew him. I knew that name. He said, right now, I'm thinking that he had, more than 3 years in the big leagues. He was a well-known player in the league. And for a guy like that not to get his due share is just a travesty. When a person joins the Marine Corps, that person's a Marine for the rest of his life, and he's treated with respect, semper fi, always faithful. Now, that's the way Major League players, the statement goes like this: once a Major Leaguer, always a Major Leaguer. That is written in stone by the Major League Players Association. Oh, sure, Kev, we want you to come to the Old Timers game. I know Killebrew's there, and all the big leagues are there, and you're not, you haven't played with them, but you're a big leaguer. You're a major leaguer, so you're welcome, and come on out, And that's the way I always looked at it. For them to turn their backs on their own brothers and not allow them, not even back them, not even support them is a travesty. In fact, I was stunned to hear through your website, your blog, and Mark, that they had that attitude that they just did not care about, guys in our situation. I personally I'm on physical disability right now. My back, my knees, my feet, my shoulders. I have rotator cuffs in both shoulders now. I mean, I'm doing, physically, I need some help. So my bills have been pretty extraordinary, but I have, now I'm on Medicare. So gosh, thank you, Lord. But still, it's just tough to get around now. And I'm only 64 years old. I mean, there are 64-year-old men, running marathons. And I have a physical disability now. So much so that, I get Social Security benefits from the government for the last 3 years. And, that's very disappointing. I certainly could use the extra money. There's no doubt about that. Because I don't work.
This is why I asked the question, because there are a lot of guys, I mentioned the fan zones, and the David Clydes. David is okay. He has made it perfectly well known. He says, I don't need the money. I'd like the money, because for him, this is a matter of equity. But there are guys out there, yourself, Marty Kuttner, who's had 3 heart attacks and has no health insurance. Jeff Turpo, who pitched for the Rangers and at the age of 67, 7 years ago, had to file for bankruptcy. I want to put a real name. There are real life consequences that I don't think the union either is cognizant of or cares about. But there are real life consequences occurring to real life people by the decision of this union. Oh, pardon me, they don't like to call themselves the union. They're a players association.
They're a union.
I don't think they're a union, exactly. But there are real life things happening to real life people, and they don't give a gosh darn. And I think you coming on this show to put a name with a face to tell your situation will go a long way. Because I know one thing, I started earlier to say what a mensch the late Michael Weiner was. If it wasn't for him, these payments, Mark calls them a stipend, I call them a reparation.
I call it blood money.
Blood money, exactly. These payments should be increased because it's just the right thing to do. How anyone in their right mind can, and I'm going back to the Pete Rose analogy, can say, you weren't good, okay? You couldn't play a lick, but you made the Major League roster, okay? Mark and I will never make a Major League roster.
No, sir.
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, you know, Pete's got that. I mean, he is the hit king. I mean, there's nobody like him, and he's pretty outstanding. He was great, but not all of us have that level of talent that he had. And believe me, I busted my backside every second on that field, just like he did.
Kevin.
And yeah.
Kev, I got a question.
Once a major leaguer, always a major leaguer.
You talked about the knees, the shoulders. If you didn't toil for 12 years playing professional ball, would those ailments be afflicting you right now?
They would not. And I've been to orthopedics. I've talked to doctors. The orthopedic doctors have said, I never had an off season. I played every winter, every single winter. I was told to play by my bosses, AKA Al Campanis. And, my arms are shut, my arm is shut because I threw more than any pitcher threw. I mean, my knees, I've taken a lot of collisions. When I played, you had collisions at the plate. You could break up a double play.
No plus for Posey rule.
Exactly. And, a lot of times when a catcher gets hit in the mask with that foul ball, you get a little jolt. I always thought, oh, well, that's nothing. I don't feel it. I wonder how many concussions I've had. I know I had one when Ivan Morel just ran me over in the Mexican League, on a quick, in fact, Dave Hilton, God rest his soul, my ex-brother-in-law who just passed away last month, he threw the ball to me. It was a pop-up third, and he turned and fired, and there's Morel. I caught the ball. As soon as I caught it, he rumbled into me, and he's a big boy. I mean, he was ripped, and he could run. I was knocked unconscious in Mexico. So, yes.
Hola.
I don't think there was concussion protocol, though. Huh.
No, there weren't. It was some smelling salts. How many fingers am I holding up? Can you get back in there, Kevin?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, how you feel, Kevin? You all right? Yeah, let me have the mask. I'll put the mask back on and let's get it on.
But Pete
that's
said
right.
You didn't play away because all those collisions, all those years playing winter ball, minor league ball, I wasn't playing, and you know what? Pete's an idiot when it comes to these things, and well, I'll never take away his hustle. I mean, obviously his nickname Charlie Hustle, and the fact that he, obviously we know what he did I guess his signature play is running over Ray Fosse in a meaningless All-Star game and then trying to blame it on Ray. So we understand who Pete is, and obviously the great records, and he was a competitor, but he speaks before he thinks. And that's why he's not on TV anymore, as well as he had some issues which we won't go into in the 70s, which, they dropped him off of that. But that was a snap decision that he made when your brother called into that show, and he spoke out of turn, and that's who he is. So let's just kind of write him off from that. But Doug, I got a question for you.
Lay it on.
I'm a numbers guy.
Yes.
How much, if let's say I had played 4 full years and got fully vested on the button 4 years prior to 1980, what would my monthly pension check look like at this point in my life?
It depends upon your final average salary. It depends upon your 3 highest years in the making. But
give me the lowest. Let's just say I made the league minimum with whatever it was for those 4 years, or maybe I was scattered over 6 years up and down from the minors.
Right. Well, right now,
give me the lowest pension number that I could get.
Right now, it's $34,000.
That's per year?
The highest is Yes, the highest is 210,000.
So you're telling me that if I played 4 years at the minimum, marginal, whatever you want to say, and I was fully vested to the day, I would get $34,000 broken up over 12 payments each year.
That's correct.
Do the math for me quickly, because this is where I'm like infuriated, so I can't calculate. But how much would that be monthly?
That's about a $3,200 check.
Kevin, what could you do with $3,200 after taxes? Let's say about $26 per month. Would that change your life in any way, shape, or form?
Absolutely. Oh, there's no doubt about it. It would absolutely change my life. And you know, I know people out there. When I played baseball, my highest salary, my major league salary, was $32,000 that I made when I played in Seattle. $32,000, and that's it. And you know, the minimum salary, I just learned through your blog, Doug, $545,000 in 2018.
Yeah. Well, I'll do you one better.
Minimum.
Mike Norris, the talented right-hander of the Oakland Athletics, he took early withdrawals. He took his pension at the age of 48 because he was really racked with injuries, and it still amounted to $85,000. You know, there is plenty of money to go around. I mean, Mark knows these numbers. The average club is worth $1.56 billion, and that's up 19% from last year. The minimum salary is, like you correctly said, Kevin, the minimum salary is going up to $535,000 in 2019. The average salary is $4.4 million, and the Players' Welfare and Benefits Fund is currently valued at more than $2.8 billion. You know, it'd be one thing if someone told me, oh, there's no money to go around, but there's plenty of money to go around, and I don't understand why Tony Clark, I understand why Steve Rogers doesn't want to give it because he wants to save face, and he's embarrassed by his actions
and he should be.
Or lack thereof. Of course he should be.
You know what? Here, let me just jump in on a quick point on this because I've been holding this one back. I really haven't been holding much back on this call, but Steve Rogers, his former manager, Dick Williams. You guys remember Dick Williams, right? Hall of Fame manager.
Right. Sure.
Dick Williams said Steve Rogers will win games for you every year, but when the big moments come, he shrinks, and he doesn't win the big game, and he doesn't come through. Well, you know what, Steve? This is the big game. And don't shrink because you're embarrassed. It's one thing to make a mistake. Everyone does. But my thing is, don't compound a mistake by ignoring it or making it worse. It's like they said when Nixon got impeached, it wasn't because of the crime, it was because of the cover-up. Well, in your case, Steve, you're making it worse by covering it up and not addressing it. Address it, take care of these guys, you become a hero. And then you make Dick Williams look like a piece of garbage for saying what he said. How about that?
Absolutely.
It's a very, very good point, and I'll go one better. Not that I'm trying to, do you one better, my friend.
I mean, if you can do one better, that's great for guys like Kevin, so let's do it.
All right, it's very simple. Steve Rogers did not get one vote for the Hall of Fame from any of the beat writers who covered the Montreal Expos. What does that say about Steve Rogers' character?
Tells me everything I need to know that they're affirming what Dick Williams said.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you guys a number.
Also, he probably wasn't very pleasant to them. He probably wasn't very pleasant. They don't like. They like to write about the guys they like too. Sometimes.
You know what, Kev? If you're Ted Williams, you can afford to be unpleasant to writers because your numbers will get you into the Hall of Fame all by themselves. But when you're Steve Rogers, you better cultivate some friendships.
Absolutely, and no question about it. And I don't like to badmouth any, but in my mind, it's just common sense. It's like I said, the Marine Corps. It's similar to that. Once you're Marine, you go up to a group and you say, they find out you're a Marine, you're treated like a brother. What can I do to help you? What can I do to help you? Now, this is beyond me. I'm really stunned by it because I didn't think it was even feasible for people to have that attitude toward other guys who are in the same fraternity, a major league player. Very few people can say they played in the big leagues.
That is
and you only get there when you work hard. Yeah, so I think without question, I hope to goodness, I'm so glad that, I found out about Doug and yourself, Mark, because I didn't even know there was an advocate out there for people like us. I thought we were just going to, just sit on the wayside and wait, and it's never going to happen. I always thought it was, why not? I talk to major league players that I know who have 4 years, and they're all telling me, oh, yeah, no question, you should get your money. You should get the money. Well, then, why aren't the major league players who are playing today knowledgeable of this situation and go to bat for us? It should be taken care of like that. Bam, just like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I'll give you a stat and a number, and this will kind of blow your mind. But if you go to a Mets game, they charge you $25 to park at the game, which I think is ludicrous, but that's for another time and another place.
Wow.
They get about 30,000 fans per game going to the game. Now I'm figuring, let's be conservative. Let's say every 3 people carpool, so 30,000 fans, 10,000 cars. The take for the parking alone at the Met game is $250,000 a game.
Yeah,
you're asking for a $34,000 pension, and that's not even, that's a little over 10% of their parking take. There's money.
It's mind-boggling. Yeah, the money. If the American baseball fan found out about this and knew what was going on, I think they'd be up in arms.
Yeah, but the problem is the networks don't want to talk about it because they're afraid to lose access or contracts with Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And on that note, we're going to try and continue our advocacy, Mark and myself, and the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I feel like I'm a shill for Ralph Tycho all of a sudden.
You really are. You do more promos than I do.
Well, if I want to be on back as someone's co-host, I guess I have to.
That's
we're
true.
going to continue this fight. We're going to continue this crusade. We're going to continue to try and remedy this injustice. And I'm just going to say one last thing, and I'm going to kick it back to my host for the day, and I thank him for allowing me the opportunity to come on the program. Kevin, I thank you for the opportunity to come on the program and to speak as passionately about this, because, again, I wanted our listeners to actually put a name to a face and to hear that there are men out there who need this money, not just who want it, but who desperately need it. And all I'm going to finish with is a quote that I think I've used before in a lot of shows. It's from Hayward Broun, the founder of the American Newspaper Guild. Sports doesn't build character. It reveals it. And I'm going to leave it at that. You can draw your own conclusions what I think about the characters of the men over at the Players Association. Gentlemen, thank you very kindly. Mark, I'll let you sign off.
Well, thank you, Doug. Thanks so much for pinch hitting. I guess we can use that term for my partner in crime, Mark Littell. I hope Mark is safe and on his way back from Cuba and had a great time there. Kevin, thanks again for being a friend of the show. Obviously, you'll always be a Dodger to me, and because of that, and also wearing number 4, you're one of the top-notch guys in my book, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. You were able to talk a little bit about some things that are very personal, which some people might not want to do, and we're going to keep this crusade going, and that's because of the fact that it's the right thing to do. And sometimes the toughest things in life to do are the right things to do, but you have to do the right thing. And so I'm just going to sign off. I'm not going to say peas at the knees like Mark would do because he's so good at it and I'm so bad at it. I'm usually the starter, so I'm going to get a complete game today. So I'll just look at it this way. Usually, Sandy Koufax always said, when they asked him what's the sign of a successful outing, and he'd say that I get to shake the catcher's hand at the end of the game. So Kevin, I'm going to give you a virtual handshake and say thanks for catching this one for us.
Great, I really appreciate it, Mark. Thanks so much, and keep up the good work. And Doug, thank you. We'll keep on fighting, and lo and behold, one day it shall come to pass.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.